Welcome to the Intuitive Eating Mama podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer D'Amato. I am an intuitive eating counselor and I'm also a mom to four. This podcast is not just for mamas, it's for all women who are ready to ditch diets, ditch the scale and food guilt forever, and instead invite peace with food, increase their body trust, and confidence in all of her choices. I believe this show is going to shed some light on sneaky ways diet culture has infiltrated your thoughts, your family, and your well-being. No matter the episode, I want you to walk away feeling informed, inspired, and encouraged. So whether you're taking a walk, washing the dishes, or carting kids around, let's dive into the latest episode on the Intuitive Eating Mama podcast. So the song tells us it's the most wonderful time of the year that's soon to be upon us, but I wonder if you feel that way. You might feel like it's the most stressful time of the year, especially when it comes to food. Don't worry, I am not going to leave you hanging here. I have something amazing that I've created for you. It's my 3 steps to create a peaceful holiday season with food. During this 3-day challenge, which is November 7th through November 9th, you will learn the 3 steps you can start taking immediately to ensure you experience a peaceful holiday season you desire while enjoying your favorite foods. To begin creating a more peaceful holiday season with food, head into the show notes wherever you're listening and click 3-day Peace with Food Challenge. Or you can head to my website, www.healthcoachforlife.com/holidaypeace. I think you absolutely deserve to have the most peaceful and enjoyable holiday season, and I can't wait for you to join me in this 3-day event. Now, after you've joined that 3-day event, we are here for episode 154. I titled this one, The 3 Things I Changed as an Intuitive Eating Mom. I am the Intuitive Eating Mama, as you know, but I wasn't always. And I think I've been very transparent about that here on the podcast and pretty much everywhere else, in person, online, social media, my email list, like everywhere you hear about that. There were some things that had to change. When I was healing my relationship with food, when I finally broke up with dieting, diet culture, the pursuit of weight loss, I had to change things because my house, my home, my family, my kids are a reflection of what I was doing. Partly because I'm the one who cooks the food, does the grocery shopping. My kids are around me a lot. They have been since they were born, and they heard a lot of things. They saw a lot of things. I did a lot of things. Oh boy. There's a lot of things I had to change, but there's 3 things that really stand out above everything else. And I want to share those with you because you might be wondering what's different when I become an intuitive eater. Is my house, my family, my home, going to have to all of a sudden change everything? And I'm going to tell you right now, no. I get clients asking me all the time, do I need to have a sit down talk with my kids and be like, okay, mom's no longer dieting. I'm an intuitive eater. No. You don't need to do any of that. Now, if you want to have conversations with your kids about things, like, go for it. If they're at an age where you can have those more in-depth conversations, great. It could be very simple things that you decide to talk to them about. But for the most part, I think our actions speak a lot louder than those words because they've been watching. They've been watching you diet, maybe not even knowing the word diet, they watch it. They know you're not eating the same things. You're on your phone putting points, tracking calories, whatever it is. Like, they see those things. They also see when they stop. They see you enjoying food again. They see you less stressed around the food. I know this. I know this happens. But I want to share the 3 things I changed as an intuitive eating mom. And then you can reflect on how those fit in your life. I don't think you have to be a mom to relate to any of these because you might have been a kid who had a mom who dieted. And you might be wondering, how does this relate to me if I don't have kids? How does it relate to you as that inner child in you that watched your mom diet year after year? All right, so the first thing I changed as an intuitive eating mom, I stopped calling food junk food. I stopped, hard stop, no more junk food. I did use terms like garbage here and there, but mostly it was, this is junk. This is unhealthy. This is bad for you. And even if I wasn't directing it at them, I certainly was directing it at myself. So the one thing that I think was so important to do was take out the morality of food. And to do this very specifically, I stopped calling food junk. I don't remember hearing the word junk growing up. Maybe unhealthy, maybe fattening. Yeah, that was probably the term I heard the most, was fattening. Because remember, back in the 80s, early 90s, everything was anti-fat. Fat made you fat. Don't eat fat. You can't have fat. Everything became low fat, no fat products. Oh my gosh. Non-fat, like no fat sour cream is the worst thing ever created. I digress. Everything was about being fattening. So I don't remember it being called junk food. Now I'm sure it was, somewhere out there people are calling it junk food. But one thing I needed to do was remove that term, junk food, for my kids. I needed to take it out altogether. I needed to take it out for me and see that food is not junk. Food is not garbage. Food is food. Took a very neutral approach and just called it what it was. Oftentimes that junk food is the stuff in the pantry. I don't know, in the cabinets, wherever you have that. It's the chips, it's the chocolates, it's the cookies, whatever that is for you that's been deemed, air quotes here, junk. I would just call it what it was. They were eating, some chips, or we were going to have cookies, no longer using the term junk. Because think about what that means to you if you eat junk. How do you feel about yourself? Now imagine how that child feels if they eat junk. Now, what I hear from clients all the time that grew up hearing junk all the time and things were called junk and eating junk, they internalize those messages. At the time, they weren't thinking, I'm eating junk, but they felt terrible. And as they got older, those internalized messages turned into a very, very toxic relationship with food. So the first thing I changed as an intuitive eating mom, I called food what it was. Whether it was chips or broccoli, it was used by name. So a very neutral approach to food, took out the judgment, took out the morality. I'm not sure my kids even noticed, honest to goodness. I don't think they noticed, but they went with it. And it was just whatever it was called. The food was the food. I can tell you I felt better making this change. All right, the second thing that I changed as an intuitive eating mom was making any comments on my kids' eating habits. This was so hard. Oh my goodness. Now, I need you to remember, my kids were not all teenagers like they are now. I have one preteen, but teenagers around here. And they weren't when everything changed for me. So this was hard to do because, of course, I wanted to make sure my kids were getting enough nutrients, that they were, full and satisfied, that they weren't missing out on anything. And of course, in my learning since then, understanding how intuitive my kids already were, like their bodies, your body is the same. It seeks out those nutrients. It knows what it needs. I had to learn to trust that in my children. If they went back for seconds, I didn't say anything. If they were done and there was food left on their plate, I didn't say anything. If they ate dinner, didn't finish, came back later, and they were still hungry, okay, brace yourself. I didn't say anything. They got something to eat. Yep. What has happened in the years of this being our normal is amazing. My kids are the best intuitive eaters, hands down. I look at them as an example of what I wish I had had and how it can be different. They eat when they're hungry, they stop when they're full. They understand satisfaction. And sometimes they're not satisfied because they didn't make dinner, I did. It's not what their taste buds were looking for. So, of course, they come back sometimes and they're like, I need something that's going to hit the spot. Don't we do that? Don't we as adults do that? We had something at dinner and it just didn't quite hit. I'm not satisfied. Have been full. I might have been done. Like I don't want any more of this. I'm no longer hungry, but it didn't quite hit the spot and I just need something else. Our kids do that too. Our kids do that too. They didn't make dinner. We probably don't sit there, and I definitely don't sit there every night and go, what would you like to eat? And each of them gets to choose their own food of what their palate's really craving. Heck no. I make dinner. Here's what we have. They have some. Sometimes they don't really love it. Sometimes they only kind of like it. And maybe they're still hungry later or they're just not satisfied. It is amazing when they're empowered to come back into the kitchen. Sometimes they've actually come back and had some more dinner, but sometimes they come grab, I don't know, a cheese stick. They'll have carrot sticks. They've had crackers. They'll have some fruit. Whatever's available, they'll have a little something. Sometimes a bowl of cereal. Heck, again, I do that. I'm like, I'm just not satisfied. The dinner was okay. It wasn't the best thing I've ever eaten. And I just want to feel fully satisfied. I've had some cereal. So have they. It is amazing when you don't question their hunger, their fullness, their satisfaction. They don't question it either. They trust themselves. It is amazing. It was the hardest thing I had to do. It was the hardest thing to stop the Clear Your Plate Club. It was the hardest thing to let go of that control that I think I know what their body needs, that I somehow am in their body. Now, I get picky eaters. I have had seasons of picky eaters, and I have maybe one still picky eater, but she trusts herself. And I've had to learn that she knows. Now, I'm not talking about babies and infants. And actually, when my kids were that age, I still kind of rolled with it, even though I was deeply immersed in diet culture. When they were done, they literally pursed their lips and told me they're done. And I seem to have accepted it then better than when they got older. Your kids have taste buds just like you do, right? Like they have flavor preferences. I can still remember as a child myself, certain meals my mother would make. My mom worked so hard outside the home and in the home. She always had something on the table at dinner. I'm so grateful for that. And it took a lot because there's days I can imagine she felt the same way. Like, I do not want to cook for these humans anymore. And got excited when we got old enough to cook for ourselves. But there were things she made I did not like. Did not like them at all. But it was not maybe as accepted to have your own taste buds. I know she grew up in a home where it was like, you eat it or you wear it. Well, maybe that was my husband's house. He's literally had that happen to him. Grew up in this Italian home as well, and you eat it or you wear it. And it was, you eat it, period. There was nothing else after that. So of course, in being raised by my parents, it was, this is what's on the table. And you eat it or you eat nothing. So you eat things you don't enjoy. I've really had to rework some of those thoughts. Now, I'm not custom making food for my kids. They've tried a lot of things, but they don't have the same taste as me. I have kiddos who would love to have things like pickles on the table. I don't want that anywhere near my food. Oh my gosh, I was touching one of my sandwiches recently and I seriously almost lost my mind. Sometimes places wrap the pickles. This place didn't, and I don't like it, but my kids would love that. They would love it if there was pickles, with the burgers or whatever we're having that seems like a pickle goes with it. They have different tastes than I do. So being able to acknowledge that, stop commenting on their hunger, fullness, and satisfaction has really shown me their bodies are intuitive. Your body is intuitive. All right, that's two things. I'm going to give you one more. Now, this may not seem like intuitive eating because I'm not going to talk about food in this, right? I'm going to go outside of food. But this is really important. I don't want you to miss it. We do not comment on bodies. We do not. Now, if you're wearing something and you look, I don't know, what's the word these days? Fresh? I don't know. Can you say that anymore? I don't even know. Snatched. I do not know the terms, but I can be like, that outfit is amazing. Like, that is just your personality in an outfit. Like, I love that color on you. I have one daughter, like, if she wears green, her eyes pop, and I am just like head over heels in love when that happens. Like, it's beautiful. We do not comment on bodies. We do not in this home. That you'd think, I don't know, I guess I think that would be easier. Maybe you think like, well, that's easy to do. It was not easy. Everything was about the body. Everything was about my body size, everything. Oh my gosh, I'm going to admit something here, and I'm not sure I've said it out loud, like on the podcast. Maybe I've said it on social media. My children took my before and after photos. My children took my progress pics. My children were so deeply involved with my weight loss journey and the size of my body, deeply. And if they weren't taking them, they were watching me take them. Oh my goodness, we do not comment on bodies in this house. We accept all body sizes. We accept that bodies change in this house. Like, that was something that needed to be talked about. That was one of the things that actually was said out loud. I wanted my children to understand bodies change, and they're supposed to. They're not meant to stay the same, even though, let me tell you what, puberty for girls, it sucks. Maybe it's the same for boys, but I wouldn't know. I only have daughters and I talk to friends who have boys. But let me tell you what, these girls are like, oh my goodness, this is not fun, but bodies are meant to change. And what I add to that for them is that's your entire life. Your bodies change. It's okay. It's normal. They're supposed to. Like, these are things that have been talked about in our house. We do not comment on the size of anyone else's body. We do not comment on body parts. Ooh, again, this is a big change. It was about everything, not just the before and afters. It was every bicep, line or something that was happening there. It was my back muscles. It was my booty. It was everything was so in focus. I noticed my kids were doing it. I noticed when they were younger, it was becoming about their body and talking about bodies and seeing bodies. I really, really think this change was one of the biggest, because their bodies have changed so much that they've been able to not love the process. I'm not saying, anyone loves the process that puberty brings. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they've been able to accept it more. Maybe embrace it. I think that might be a stretch because, again, it's a difficult thing to do. But accept that this is what happens, that bodies are meant to change, and that all bodies are beautiful, that we're not, all supposed to look the same. All 4 of my girls look different. They all came from the same 2 people, and yet they all look different. And even being able to embrace that and accept that, like, this is normal. Big change in our house. I do spend time sometimes wondering what would have been different for me if these were things I grew up with, things I understood. If my parents understood these things, like, would I ever have started dieting? Would I have struggled with how I saw my body? Would I have struggled so much from the ages of 17 to 25 when my body seemed to change drastically and I didn't understand that that was normal? I didn't do anything different. Actually, I was more active from the age of 17 to 21 and yet felt like something was wrong with my body. If I had grown up knowing these things, would I have still dieted to the extent I did? Disordered eating to the extent that I participated? I do wonder about that. And I can't foresee the future for my children. I have conversations with the older ones now about the pressures that are out there and how much they hear from diet culture in their friends, in their conversations. My oldest on social media, she's like, it's everywhere. But she's grown up differently. It's not that she doesn't have these thoughts that come in, but she also has ways to redirect them and find peace and comfort and confidence. So I wonder for myself. And you might wonder that too. You might wonder, would it have been different? Will it be different for my family, for my kiddos? I know a lot of the women I work with are moms, and that's what draws them into this is they know to be able to help our kids not be caught up in diet culture, we have to heal our relationship with food and body ourselves first. I couldn't have done any of the work here as a mom if I hadn't done it on myself. There really is some truth to, that whole thing on the plane is you need to put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can help the person next to you. You really do need to be able to breathe easier for yourself. And again, I think my children really benefited most from watching because they were picking stuff up from watching. I assure you, I wasn't sitting there telling my kids they needed to go on a diet. I know I've worked with plenty of women whose mothers have put them on diets. I wasn't doing that, but they certainly were witness to toxic diet culture, disordered eating for a really long time. And they got to see the change and they got to see the shift. And as they've gotten older and it's been more appropriate to have some of those conversations, or when things have been presented to them and they've been able to bring that to me, we've had those conversations. Like I said at the beginning, there's lots of changes, that I made. There's lots of changes that have happened. Some immediately, like changing, how we talked about food, but some that happened progressively over time. But no matter what, things change. And they've all changed for the good, becoming an intuitive eating mom and an intuitive eating family. I actually think my kids were intuitive eaters the whole time. I was just like inserting diet culture where it didn't belong. It doesn't belong anywhere. Could we just remove it from everywhere, please? My plea. Have always been intuitive eaters. I became an intuitive eating mom. And then the whole house has just become an intuitive eating environment. Kind of awesome. All right, this has been a fun one. I do like reflecting. I even like looking back at my own childhood and being like, that's where that came from. Like, there's nothing wrong with me, and I'm not blaming parents. I'm not looking at my parents being upset because I know where it came from for them. And these things that get passed on from generation to generation, I've just decided it ends here. You might be thinking, I need to end here as well. I hope that this has given you something to think about. I certainly hope that you've decided, if you hadn't at the beginning, that you want to have a more peaceful holiday season and that you're going to join us for that. Head into the show notes. Be sure to join the 3-day challenge that I'm hosting to have a more peaceful holiday season with food. I'll see you right here next week.